Namaste and good day, friends. Yugal Parashar, editor of Indian News. Friends, we have with us a very young and dynamic politician, a leader, Chris Bishop. He is National Party's list MP from Hutt South.
That's right.
Welcome to the Indian News, Chris, and how are you today?
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah, no, I'm
Great.
good. Good to be in Auckland.
Yeah, Chris, since this is the first time you'll be talking to our audience, would you mind telling us a little bit of yourself so people know you more?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm 39. I'm about to turn 40 in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm hoping that my birthday present will be an election victory for National in October. So I live in Lower Hutt in Days Bay. I used to live in Petone. I was born and raised in Lower Hutt, and I've been an MP now for 9 years. As a list MP, and then I was the MP for Hutt South.
From the same electorate?
Yeah, based in the same electorate, yeah. I started life as a list MP, then I became the MP for Hutt South. Now I'm a list MP again, and hoping to be the MP for Hutt South after the election.
Sure. Now, Chris, as I understand, you are the chairperson of the election campaign committee of National Party. How is the campaigning going so far?
That's right. Yeah, I have the privilege of running the overall National Party campaign, and look, it's going pretty well. Our polling is good. Obviously, we're in the sort of high 30s, and on the current numbers, we can form a government with the ACT Party, which would be good. But there's a long way to run until the election, obviously, a few weeks to go, and voting doesn't open until the 2nd, so we're not being complacent or counting our chickens, as they say, before they're hatched. So a lot of hard work to do, but we're feeling positive about things.
That was going to be my next question. So the latest poll surveys favor you and the ACT Party forming the next government. So how confident are you? Do you trust those poll surveys?
We're cautiously optimistic about how things are going. I think there's a real mood for change around the country. Certainly amongst many people in the Indian community that I talk to, they say, we just can't wait for a change of government. We've got to get a government focused on the economy. And that's not what's happening at the moment. So we're cautiously optimistic, but a long way to go, and we'll be working hard for every vote between now and October 14.
Great. Now, I'm sure your party must be aware of something which this present government is doing strategically and silently. They are slowly creeping those, beneficiary in different electorates, which, the last election parties won with a very thin margin. They are putting, Kianga or housing in some of those electorates, which were unheard of earlier, like in the CBD or maybe in the Epsom or in some other suburbs of the Auckland and some other part of the country as well. I just want to know, is your party aware of their strategy?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a deliberate electoral strategy by Labour, but it's certainly true that there is more Kāinga Ora housing going in around the place, which is the old Housing New Zealand corporation. And we do need more social and community housing. Our focus in the National Party is more on community housing, social housing run by the community sector rather than Kāinga Ora housing so much. So there is a role for more housing because housing is a big issue in New Zealand, and that will be a focus for us in government as well.
Yeah, now for last many months we were listening those stories of scandals of ministerial scandals of Labour Party or the government. Everything doesn't seem to be all right in the National Party as well. Of late there have been few things, you're one of the stalwarts just quitting the politics. I'm talking of Mr. Woodhouse. And you're another MP, what's his name? Tim Mullen. Yeah, he has made stories for all wrong reasons. Yeah. What do you have to say about this?
Well, look, I think they're both quite different scenarios. Michael Woodhouse, unfortunately, has decided to leave the Parliament, or at least go off the National Party.
But that was because he was very, very lowly, put on the list.
Well, he's made the decision to not run on the National Party list. Tim van der Molen made a mistake, which he's fully accepted, accountability for, and he will be running again, and very confident he'll win his seat in Waikato.
Has he still found his name in the list?
Tim is on the list, yes, he is, and he's the MP for Waikato, and I'm sure he'll be re-elected in the Waikato seat. But I think it pales in comparison to what's been happening with the Labour Party, with ministers leaving under all sorts of different scenarios, and certainly things I think are a lot happier in the National Party than they are in the Labour Party.
Yeah, I partly agree with you because scandal or any controversy is the controversy, whether you are in party or in government or you're part in opposition. So the discipline and order has to be on both the sides.
That's exactly right. And look, we're very focused and disciplined in the National Party. We're a very strong team led by Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis, and we're very focused on getting as many votes as we can between now and October 14 and hopefully changing the government. And we're a very strong team in the National Party. We've got each other's back, and we're looking forward to hopefully a change.
How do you rate Labour government's performance of past almost 6 years now?
Look, I would say they came into government in 2017 with high hopes, and I think most people said, I hope they do well, but unfortunately they've really failed on any number of grounds over the last few years. The economy is obviously the number one. The cost of living is terrible. Inflation is 6%. It's 3 times what it should be on the targets. People finding it hard to get ahead. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. We're now in recession. Our debt levels are rising. Forecast increases in unemployment over the next few years. So I think most people look at the economy and say they just haven't delivered on the economy, and ultimately that's what it all comes down to. And so there's wider issues as well around poverty, around housing, around the environment, for example, as well, where they've just not delivered. And I think that's a real frustration for many people.
National Party leader Christopher Luxon yesterday only said or announced that there will be no context given to the gangs, as it has been going for past almost maybe around 40 plus years. So this is just in stark contrast with it was started by National Party's Prime Minister only in early 80s. So how is it just going absolutely opposite to the original policy of National Party?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I wasn't even born in the 1970s when Rob Muldoon was around, so I think times have changed in the last 50 years. But what we've got in New Zealand is a real problem with gangs. We've got a situation where there are almost as many gang members as there are police officers, and the gangs are just out of control, and they're behind a lot of the crime that we're seeing around the country, and including in Auckland. And the ram raids that are causing havoc in our communities. And so we do have to have a tough line with the gangs. And this government, Labour, gave the mongrel mob a contract to run an anti-meth program in Napier in the Hawke's Bay. And that just won't be happening under National. We need to have no contact with the gangs, and actually what the police should be doing is trying to crack down on them and disrupting their operations, because if you think about drugs in New Zealand, they're driven by the gangs. You think about the ram raids, driven by the gangs, and we need to have a zero tolerance policy to gangs in New Zealand.
Your coalition partners, ACT Party, they have got a very firm and tough stand about your policy, one of the biggest policies of National, that's the road building. And if you are in the forming government, they say if you are having Chinese money for those projects, they'll be strongly opposing it. Yeah. And that could lead to even they can go to any extent. That's what David Seymour has to say.
Well, we're not focused on getting Chinese money in to build our roads in New Zealand. The point we were making is that we should be open to foreign investors coming in and helping to finance new roads, but also public transport infrastructure in New Zealand. It's not about Chinese money or anything like that. It's things like pension funds in Canada, for example, or European pension funds. There's a lot of capital, offshore capital out there that's looking for a home, and they want to invest in New Zealand. And the current government's got an approach where everything has to be done through central government. Our approach is that we should be open to foreign capital and foreign investment in New Zealand. So it's not about China, it's about foreign investment generally.
Do you see New Zealand First, the Winston Peters, as your possible coalition partner?
Well, let's just wait and see. I mean, Winston Peters has been around a long time, but not that many polls have him coming back to Parliament at the moment. Let's just wait and see where things go. Ultimately, that will be over to the New Zealand people.
I ask you this question because David Seymour again said, if National Party at all looks for any kind of partnership or coalition with the New Zealand First, that will be a deal breaker for them. Yeah,
well, that's over to David. I mean, he's going to say a lot of things over the next few weeks in the run up to the election, and ultimately it will be over to the New Zealand people. And my own view is I don't think Winston Peters is going to make it into Parliament. I think ultimately, if people want to change the government, they need to party vote for National, because it's the most important vote is the party vote. And I encourage people to tick National, party vote National, and tick the local National candidate as well.
So how hopeful you are about your prospects or National Party's prospects if you put aside those survey results, how positive are you about the outcome?
Look, we're cautiously optimistic. There's a long way to go. Obviously, the latest polls are pretty good for National, but we take nothing for granted. We're not complacent at all. We're working really hard, and we've got candidates all around the country, including my patch of the Hutt Valley. But here in Auckland, you've seen all the signs up, people working really hard to get votes for National.
In last 2 days, I'm pretty sure you might have heard about India's moon mission, Chandrayaan, reaching the moon. Unfortunately, the feedback which I have received in past 2 days, people are complaining about it, and New Zealand politicians seem to be oblivious of what's happening around the world. Except for the ACT Party leader David Seymour, no one, not including national leader or Christopher Luxon or even the Prime Minister of New Zealand, no one has even congratulated India on this historic feat. What do you have to say about it?
Well, I congratulate India on a historic feat. I mean, what an extraordinary outcome. I listened to the radio about it.
I think it should have come from the leader, party leader itself.
Yeah, well, I hear you, and I take your point. But
even the New Zealand Prime Minister has not done that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an extraordinary accomplishment by India, and really signifies India's extraordinary development. And look, India is a country I've been to. I have many Indian friends. I'm a massive cricket fan, so been very privileged to spend a bit of time there. And,
I hope you understand these small things convey a deep message to the wider community.
Yeah, I think I understand exactly where you're coming from, and an extraordinary achievement by India, and signifies its continued growth and development as a prosperous democracy. And one that the National Party wants to build, a national government would want to build a strong relationship with, and we've signalled that a free trade deal with India would be, and an economic partnership with India would be a real priority for us in government.
That was going to be my last question to you. So, because so far this government's policies have been China-centric, so what will be National Party's, move forward when it comes to India?
Well, we want to develop an economic partnership with India. There's so much that unites India and New Zealand. We're both democracies, focused on the rule of law, both lovers of sport and trade and business, and economic growth and prosperity. And there's so much that unites us. We've got a very strong Indian diaspora in New Zealand, and many New Zealanders living in India as well. And we want to forge and build on that relationship. And have a trade agreement. Now, there will be areas where India and New Zealand disagree, including over trade, but what's really important is that you have that relationship that's respectful, and we would want to see leader-to-leader exchanges. We were very fortunate that the Indian Foreign Minister came here not long ago, and that was a real, I think, feather in the cap of New Zealand. And we welcome those sort of exchanges and those linkages. And I'm sure Christopher Luxon, if he is elected Prime Minister on October 14, he would want to travel very quickly to India to help forge that relationship with the Modi government.
That sounds quite promising. What's your message for your prospective voters for 14th of October?
My message is that if you want a government focused on developing the economy, focusing on the cost of living and getting New Zealand back on track, then I'd ask them to vote for National with their party vote and also with their electorate vote as well. And with a strong National-led government, we can really get this country moving.
Thank you so much for that. And once again, all the best for your 14th October outcome.
Thank you very much.
And hope to see you back in Parliament.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.